Hey, everybody out there in social media land, wherever you're checking this out. I am Noel Pulanco, and this is
Mike Stout.
Mike Stout. This is the Big Guys Biz Show. Thanks for checking it out. Our guest this week is one of my new friends from my networking group, Bradley Roth, with Smart Gold. Bradley, you want to introduce yourself, even though I just kind of did?
Yeah, I mean, you said it pretty well. Excited to be here. Yes, I am an executive broker for Smart Gold and a tax strategist as well.
So Bradley does not do your taxes, but he can help with tax strategy. So do you want to start there before we get into the gold stuff?
Yeah, we can touch on that briefly. Okay. Like you kind of said it, I'm not an accountant, so I don't do your taxes, but I'll help you pay less. So a lot of times, accountants, CPAs, that kind of stuff, they kind of are like, okay, send me all your stuff for the past year, looking into the past. And, obviously that's important. You got to do that. But when I work with people, it's more of like on an ongoing basis, and we're looking more into the future, right? What strategies can we employ and kind of plan for, and that kind of stuff, that kind of matches up with your goals and your big picture. So, and then kind of more within the context of, your small business and your life, just kind of a different angle than your traditional, bookkeeper, accountant, that kind of thing. So I'll work with CPAs and refer out and kind of team up with them and that kind of thing, but
Gotcha.
A little bit of a different focus.
So helping us keep more of our money, where the gold strategy is helping us make some more money, right?
Well, a little bit of both. They both kind of fall into what I call like wealth preservation, right? So there's two main things that kind of, no matter what you do, everyone's kind of subject to in terms of it taking away pieces of your wealth. One, everyone's very aware of is taxes, right? Everyone pays taxes, or a lot of people try not to, but at the end of the day, you need to. And then
the government's not listening to this. We're in the trust tree.
Yeah, right. And then the second thing that everyone is subject to, which is, I would say most people are much less aware of, but is more insidious, is inflation.
Sure.
Right. So the inflation side, where they're printing, devaluing our currency, and debasing it, that's where gold and silver come in, is to protect and hedge a lot of times against that inflation, right? So the value of your dollar is going down because they're printing more of it, right? Flooding the system. And so precious metals are something where gold in particular, you can't print it. It's very scarce and rare. So it kind of naturally limits the supply, and therefore keeps the value of that money long term.
So we all see the commercials like, buy gold, buy silver to help against inflation. But I think what some people that haven't looked into this yet don't understand is, how is that helping us hedge against inflation? So, I mean, you correct me if I'm wrong, but we're investing in the gold and putting that money in there so that when we're ready to cash it out, it's worth more in 10 years than it's beating inflation within that 10 years, right?
Yeah, so if you look at gold and silver, like I said, you can't print them. And so that supply, they print more and more dollars. The gold amount stays pretty much fixed. And so when you compare the amount of currency so currency and money are two different things. Most people think it's the same, but currency is, you exchange it, and it's tradable and it's fungible and all these things. But the difference between currency and money is also a store of value, right? So your dollar does not hold value. It's gone down 98% since the Federal Reserve was invented in 1913.
What a deal.
Yeah, right. Sounds great, right? Whereas, gold, that doesn't happen. So it's an effective store of value over time, because when they were on the gold standard, which they got off of in 71, they could only have as much money in the system as there was the value of gold, right? And that's what kind of kept the strength of the dollar to a degree, and kept them from spending out of control and that kind of stuff, right? And so the amount of dollars, if they increased the amount of dollars, it would kind of have to match up with the amount of gold, right? So there was some restraint on the monetary system. After that, it's just been, they kind of go nuts with it and can print all the money they want.
It feels like the Wild West. They're just printing and spending, and we're just starting to pay $8 for eggs all of a sudden, right?
Exactly. And so you hear about these countries where they experience hyperinflation, right? And the reason that they experience that is not that they're any stupider than the United States. It's just that the United States has been the world reserve currency for a while now. And what that means is all international trade, right? And you've probably heard about the recent stories about coming off the petrodollar agreement ending and that kind of stuff. It's pretty significant.
Was that with Saudi Arabia, right?
Saudi Arabia, yeah. And so the petrodollar is basically this agreement where all foreign oil transactions and that kind of stuff was done in dollars. And so that requires all of these other countries to hold money in dollars because it's when they trade between each other, it's all transacted in dollars. And so what that allows us to do in the US is print all of this money and we can spread it out between the whole world, right? Whereas you hear about a country like Venezuela and the population is a small fraction of ours and their system is a small fraction of ours. And so when they print money, it has a much more direct or quicker impact on the system. And so with dollars, they're all spread out. But if, at some point you could still dilute it, right? And we're seeing that. We're seeing the inflation. And then also BRICS alliance, which is Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. They've been talking together for a while, but it's really gaining steam. They've added several countries to that alliance, and their goal is to move away from the dollar in international trade and replace it with their own currency that they use. And so,
well, they all want to be in the position we were in for all these 40 years, right?
Right. And right now, the U.S. isn't really making any friends between China and Russia, who are these other powers, right? And so those countries know, okay, we're not going to engage the U.S. ever in a hot war, right? Militarily wise, that would be the end of the world, nuclear, that kind of, obviously they don't want to do that. But they're okay, how can we cut them off at the knees? We can do it financially, economically, right? And so if we can get enough countries to move away from the dollar and start using this system, what that does is it takes away this power the U.S. has had as being the world reserve currency, where they can just print and kind of almost control the money supply around the world. And so 40% of dollars are held overseas by other countries. About 60% of them are held here, right? And so if they ever were to switch off of the dollar as the world reserve currency, which I think that would be a gradual thing. It's probably not going to happen tomorrow, but that precedence has never been.
But it's been happening, right?
It's been happening slowly, but they actually release, which they're openly developing their own blockchain currency right now, that they're saying may be backed by gold as well. Which, we're not too sure about that, but if enough of these countries come off the dollar, they start to send their dollars back to the U.S. because they have no need for them. And they I can't remember if I'm saying that right, but reappropriate those dollars or repatriate. And we get all these dollars flooding back into the US all at once. That obviously is not a good scenario for the dollar. Really? So, yeah. So I know I just went on for quite a bit, but that's
no, that's good enough. Hopefully we didn't melt everybody's brain with that, but I was trying to follow along. Yeah. But that's why we want to have you. I'm not an expert in any of this stuff, so I think it's all good info. Now, I know that I want to kind of talk about both of the ways that you help people invest in gold. Let's start with, I think physical is probably the easiest thing to explain, at least to me, but talk about owning actual physical gold.
Yeah, so we actually only deal in physical gold and silver. Okay. So there's physical, and then there's what we call paper gold, which would be Forex, ETF, kind of more like stock market type things that have the label of gold on them. But when we're talking about the actual asset itself, we're talking about the physical asset, right? And so there's the privacy, there's the whole part of it being physical is where they can't print it and create more of it at will, right? And so it's those physical properties that really give gold and silver its value.
I think maybe what I was asking is you offer two different ways to own physical gold, right?
Yes,
so
we do.
I can buy it from you and have some in my hand. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so we have two kind of buckets that falls into. So the first one would be over the counter, we call it, which is pretty straightforward. You have cash, you have money in the bank, and you want to do a currency exchange and own physical precious metals. So that's a pretty straightforward kind of retail transaction. And there's, that's if you want to start small and consistently add to it and that kind of thing, that's pretty easy to do. Okay. But the majority of our business, I would say, comes from the IRA rollover side of things. And so what that looks like is, we set up what's called a self-directed IRA, which many people aren't even aware of exists, because they really don't want you to know it exists, because what it does is it takes money out of Wall Street and out of the stock market and that kind of stuff. And so
It protects it from taxes too, right?
I'd say that answer really is nuanced and depends, but it can save you definitely from fees, right?
Okay.
And so typically people who have their money in, say with a financial advisor, that usually they get, there's exceptions, but most financial advisors are being paid a percentage of assets under management, right? So whether
like
it's
a commission,
4.5% to 2.5% a year, that kind of thing.
Sure.
That compounded over time makes a huge difference, right? And so with a self-directed IRA, you pay a small flat fee to maintain the account with the custodian, but whether you have $4,000 or $4 million in there, 100% of that growth and appreciation is yours, and it's not.
So it's the standard financial advisor. It's more like a commission almost. We're calling it a fee, but yeah. So they're earning based on the performance of the portfolio, right?
Financial advisor is, but with self-directed, it's you have more control. So with self-directed, you also have some more options too. You could invest in physical precious metals. So if you get physical precious metals, they are stored in a third-party depository just because there's regulation around that. But you can take that physical into possession, without penalty after 59.5. It would be like withdrawing or selling off part of your IRA, right? Same thing. But you can obtain the physical side of it because it is there. It's physical in a vault. It's not like just a paper certificate that's kind of, like a stock or something like that. So, but with self-directed IRAs, you can own crypto in there. You can own real estate. You can own private businesses, all these things that, again, most people aren't aware that they can even do. Sure. Just because there's not the big finance, marketing, Wall Street kind of engine behind it. And so it's one of those things that like you tell people that and they're like, really? Why haven't I been told about this? Or, how do I do that? And that kind of stuff. So it's fun to kind of like see the light bulbs, go off with people. But
mine's trying to light up right now. It's working.
Trying.
Right there.
Trying.
Green a little bit.
Yeah. So, are you advising people on how to do real estate and everything else, or your main focus is the precious metals?
Our main focus is the precious metals.
Okay.
Yeah. So I can help people, point them in the right direction to someone who can help them do that. But
like a realtor if they need to buy something, right?
Potentially. Yeah. I mean, there's different, owning real estate within a self-directed IRA has a couple more steps than say precious metals, right? Just because, a real estate transaction, as you know, has a bit that goes along with that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so we stick to the precious metals, but again, it's that whole kind of like actually you owning it directly within that self-directed IRA, whereas most people don't realize that if you own something through a Schwab or Fidelity and that kind of thing, in the fine print, they actually own what's in the account and you have a right to that. So in the event of say some sort of black swan market crash or something like that, they have the legal right to sell your assets or empty your account and there's nothing you can do about it. Awesome. So yeah, great, right? So
it's not like that's coming soon, right?
Yeah, they snuck that into the Uniform Commercial Code back in the 90s real quietly. So people are starting to kind of become aware of that, but that's another advantage, I think, to self-directing. And so I know I just again went on for quite a bit there. Hopefully
it's good. So if somebody engages you, I'm guessing you kind of look at what is their income, what is their potential to invest, and then you kind of walk them through what makes sense for them and their expenses and all that stuff, and how much they should be putting in what, and how much that you recommend, and the aggressiveness of their investing in a particularly precious gold or precious metals, I should say.
Yeah, so we always do take a big look at their big picture, just from like a perspective of what they have available and from a tax perspective, right? Because when we're dealing with rollovers, we want to make sure that we're not creating a taxable event and that kind of thing. But we're not really saying, oh yeah, you should go invest this and that and the other thing, right? That's not really what we do. If they want to invest in precious metals, we find out first how much makes sense for them. So usually that's the number they give to us, or we kind of work on together based on what they have available. And then we kind of look at their age, their risk tolerance and that kind of thing. And that's how we kind of determine the ratio of, say, gold to silver within their portfolio, because gold tends to be a little bit more stable, silver is a little bit more volatile, and that kind of thing. And so we'll shift that ratio, and then within that, we'll also advise them on, there's a lot of different types of gold and silver. So silver, and it's like saying all silver or all gold's the same is kind of like saying, all cars are the same, right? They all have, 4 wheels and a steering wheel, and they get you from A to B, but there's a lot of differences in between that. So
like, what are some of those differences, like coins versus bars?
Coins versus bars, and then certain coins or certain, more so within coins, like will, they might cost a little bit when you're like, oh, well, this is an ounce of gold versus this is an ounce of gold, and why does this one cost a little bit more? And it's like, okay, yeah, this one might cost slightly more, but it's going to retain and have better resale value at the end of the day. And so
I want all Spanish doubloons. Aren't those worth more?
Spanish doubloons.
Yeah. Aren't those the ones on the pirate ships? I mean, they got to be worth more than just a new presidential seal, like a Ronald Reagan gold coin, right?
They might be. We tend to not really deal in the treasure chest gold game, but
oh, sorry, no.
Yeah, so there's a few different like kind of categories of gold too. There's like old gold, right, which is that kind of old collectible, maybe stuff you found on a pirate ship. And then there's numismatic coins, which are kind of more like collectible value, and you'll see commercials about those a lot of times and that kind of thing. And
that's what I was kind of talking about. There's differences like that, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So we tend to kind of steer away from those because the value of those coins really varies depending on who you're bringing it to. So to someone, it may not be worth anything. To others, it may be worth a lot. But it's more, that value is more on the collectability than the actual precious metal content. And so that's why we work strictly with gold and silver bullion. And that is based more so on the purity and the actual content of that precious metal versus the collectability of it.
Gotcha. So
if you want to really, if you want to own precious metals and you want it to be stable and hold and increase value and that kind of thing, then I would focus specifically on bullion.
You're taking out that variable of, is it popular right now, right?
Exactly, because you might buy something that's popular now, and then 10 years down the road, maybe gold and silver have gone up, but that coin, you can't sell it for what you got it for, right? And we run into people who are like, I got all these things, and why have they not, appreciated, or I can't even get the value back of what I bought it for. And it's like, well, it's because there's different factors at play.
Now, when most people are investing, I'm sure everybody does it different, but are most people investing just like a lump sum? Are they doing like a monthly recurring investment? I'm sure it's different for everybody, but do you kind of see both of those? And what do you think is better? I guess it depends on the individual, right?
Depends on the individual. So for, I would say most people don't really have I don't know if discipline's the right word, but most people aren't like, yeah, let me chip away a little bit each month. A lot of times it is, kind of more of a lump sum for people, because if you really understand it and believe in it, most people at that point will make whatever is a significant investment for them. And so a lot of times it'll be a lump sum, and then every so often, when they have more to invest, it'll be, they'll add to their position. But you don't see a whole lot of people doing it like, on a monthly or bi-monthly basis. Especially with the IRA rollovers, if you do that, you're probably not doing that over and over and over. You know what I mean? Because it's a slightly more involved process. It's still pretty easy, but
we'll talk about the IRA rollover. So I have two IRAs, my wife and I both. So I could roll that one over into. Could I do a portion of it or all of it into precious metals?
You could do however much you want from the IRA or old 401k. Right. Okay. If you're currently at that company still, it's a 401k, unless you're, say, over 60 in most cases, or it depends on your company's policy. You typically can't touch it or roll it over. But if it's like a company that you left, because a lot of people have these older 401ks that aren't really doing too much, or they want to diversify from the stock market, because most people think they're diversified, but it's all within one currency, one economy, depending on one country and all that kind of stuff. And so to answer your question, yes, you could move a portion of it, all of it. It's totally up to you. But we do have kind of a soft minimum around 25,000 that we typically start to do the rollovers. And kind of,
Mike, you're going to do 3, right?
Yeah, 4 maybe. I was just going to ask that question because there's somebody out there going, I want to do this, but what's your minimum?
Yeah.
But you
Yeah.
nailed
So for
it.
the rollovers, but for over the counter, it's a different story. So for there's not, we don't have really a hard minimum for that. So if someone is like, okay, I don't have a large retirement account,
Mhm.
but I still, I have some cash sitting on the sidelines and I want to preserve that value, then that is the way to go.
So you'll work with people.
Oh yeah, for sure. There's different ways
Got
to do things.
Good to
Yeah.
know.
It seems like it makes sense to me if you, let's say you just, you start with 25, why not do a monthly or quarterly kick in like a regular IRA or 401k? But you're saying not a lot of people do it. That seems like it would be the way to keep me disciplined if I could set up an automatic, contribution. But to each his own. If you've got money sitting around that you can use, why not?
Yeah, so it depends because there's only certain ways that you can contribute to that, right? So if you have a self-directed IRA, like the IRA limit, right, is like 7. It's not a huge number, 7,000-8,000 a year, I think. It's for this year,
Wow.
and then 401ks have to directly come out of your payroll.
Gotcha.
And so you can't just say I have a bunch of cash, I'm going to put it into this IRA, right, past a certain point. And so the way to get more funds into that account would be through the rollover. So you could do say you're 60 plus and you have this 401k that you can move and you're still contributing to it, and then you can do rollover after rollover. We really don't see that too much, but just because of the nature of how to transfer or what you're able to do within a rollover. So whereas if you're going over the counter, it'd be easier. Yeah, if you want to just do a monthly, bi-monthly, quarterly, kind of add to it, that's easier to do. Yeah.
Gotcha. So again, that's where it takes sitting down and kind of having a strategy session with you to figure out what the best way to do it.
Yeah. Even if someone comes to us and they're like, hey, I'm ready to go, I got X amount. We're like, all right, let's slow down. Let's sit down. Let's map this out. See what really makes sense. Yeah.
So we're talking right now, it's June 2024 and anything could happen. Tell us maybe like the last 6 months, what have you seen happen and what do you see going on for the next 6 months? I know you don't have a crystal ball.
From a precious metals perspective?
Yeah.
Yeah. So in the past, roughly 6 months, gold has been hitting, it's hit several new all-time highs. Now it's trading in the 2300s, and that's per ounce, or troy ounce is how it's measured. And then silver has been up as well. In the last 6 months, both of them are between 20 and I believe 25% last I checked, roughly. So don't quote me on that, I don't have it pulled up right this minute, but so there's been significant movement in that market, and a big part of it is actually China's central bank is buying up tons and tons of gold. So China, Russia, India, more.
So they're pushing the market up.
Correct. So individual investors are definitely, buying a lot more right now too, but a big part of that movement has been from the last two years. There's been far more gold bought by central banks than ever in history.
And they're probably buying in bulk, right? So
yes,
making an immediate change in the market, kind of.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. So it's like, okay, what are they preparing for? What do they know that we don't, kind of thing? And so that's been a big mover in the market, but also just people are like, okay, inflation is going up, geopolitical tension is kind of in an interesting position right now between a lot of different countries. There's the BRICS movement, so there's all these things that are kind of like threatening the dollar or the value of the dollar in ways that we've never really seen in our lifetime, and so I have no idea where it's going to go, but what I would say is all the things that have been pushing these prices up, I don't really see them changing too much in the near future. And so a lot of people are pretty bullish still on, even after this past 6 months, on kind of where things are headed with precious metals.
Well, and tell me if I'm wrong here, but even if you buy, physical, if you're invested in physical, if the market goes down in it, you still have that, like when you buy real estate, you're buying sticks and bricks, the appreciation can go up, rents can change, interest rates can change, but at least you still have the sticks and bricks of the house, but it's only worth what the houses are around it for. So at least with physical gold, it's not like a stock where you've got, a position in a company, you've still got that physical weight. So if it drops down a little bit, hang on to it and watch that it can come back, right? And I think it's proven over the years that it always comes back.
Yeah, there's still utility to that asset, right? It's commodity, right? So it's different than other commodities where if you look at like, oil or those kinds of things. Oil gets used up very fast. Gold, the reason it holds its value is because again it's a commodity, but it doesn't get consumed.
Yeah, it's like indestructible, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So if there's anything left after the world ends, it'll be gold.
Gold and cockroaches, awesome.
What a world, yeah. Gold covered cockroaches. But I think, to answer your question, there's a lot of factors that are kind of creating this like upward pressure on gold and silver, and silver in particular is used as silver derives a little bit more of its value from the industrial side of things, right? It's using a lot of technology, solar panels, that kind of stuff, and so silver and gold have a little bit of kind of different mechanics that affect their value and that kind of thing.
And then you've got other stuff. Can you help people? I mean, is there any market for copper? What about cobalt and platinum and some of these other weird stuff? I mean, cobalt's in every Tesla battery and every cell phone, right? Is that something that people are trying to invest in? Is it even possible?
It is possible, not with us. I have heard of companies that invest in like rare earth metals, trace minerals, that kind of stuff. The four traditional precious metals are gold, silver, platinum, and palladium.
Okay.
But 99% of what we do is gold and silver. So I don't really talk too much about platinum and palladium. They're much more kind of...
Well, I just wanted to throw you a curveball and see if you could hit that mark.
But there are ways, I don't think it would be a bad investment to invest in like, rhodium and some of these other kind of like industrial metals that there's only going to be an increased need for in the future because of, EV technology and microchips and stuff like that. So I don't even know what rhodium about is. Those things.
Sounds like one of the villains against Godzilla or something, but I believe you that it's
right.
Well, there's a ton that I don't know, and I know that there's a ton that folks out there don't know. When is the right time to start a conversation with you? Is it just any time that somebody's thinking about investing? Is there a certain amount they should have ready to go? Like when do you want to have somebody talk to you and start that strategy session?
Honestly, I think it's important to have a conversation whether you're looking to,
whether you're ready or not.
Yeah, because it's one of these things that I think people are very generally undereducated on. I know I was until I started to get into the industry, and it's one of those things that is so foundational to understand because how it ties into, money, currency, Federal Reserve, printing, macroeconomics, all this stuff that is very foundational, but people kind of get lost in the clouds of money making and investing and this stock with high upside and that kind of stuff. Whereas it's like, okay, if we want to break down how things actually work on a fundamental level, both in this country, in the world, and that kind of stuff, it's like understanding not just precious metals, but how our monetary system works and all of that kind of stuff. That's kind of fun to go down some rabbit holes. And, because once you understand that on a basic level, then you can start to kind of see where things are headed, and you can start to kind of read some signs on your own and really understand, why would I go into this versus this, and how much should I own and how much should I have here and all that kind of stuff. So I'm big on like people educating themselves, but I also love to educate because that's what I'm doing 90% of the time, because everyone is kind of is familiar with stocks and stuff like that, and everyone's seeing gold and silver on jewelry and the movies and that kind of stuff, but don't really understand the tie-ins to the bigger picture. And so I like to really help people kind of educate themselves at that level.
I feel like it would be easier to understand than trying to explain to somebody that's just getting into investing about stocks and bonds and all these other things. And like my RA, we've got an aggressive plan. I pay attention a little bit to what they're putting it into, but I'm also kind of trying not to look at it. I want it to just work.
Somewhat set it and forget it.
Yeah, but gold and silver, I think like we all kind of get that. It's just how do we get started in it, right?
Yeah.
So
correct.
Awesome. Well, that's why I wanted to have you on. Mike, do you have any other questions for Bradley?
I don't. I had the one, but you've already nailed it. So
I'm pretty good at asking Mike's questions for him. Bradley, we've got your info all over the screen. But what's how do you prefer to be reached?
I'd say probably the easiest would be through email.
Okay.
So yeah, Bradley at smartgold.com.
Yep.
And, happy to connect with anyone. Also, maybe Instagram might be an easy one too. That's at Bradley_Roth on Instagram.
Awesome.
And happy to connect and have a conversation with anyone.
And you're not just doing local AZ. You can help anywhere, anytime, right?
Anywhere, anytime. So we cover the whole. We work with anyone in the U.S. Outside of Minnesota. Minnesota's got some kind of funky, different regulations and stuff like that. We kind of steer away from. But everywhere else is fair game, even outside the United States. So
Minnesota, figure it out so we can help you guys
get it together.
But everybody in Minnesota's got at least one family member here, so
that's true. A lot of transplants.
Well, also, we never like to go too long on these things, but Bradley, that was a lot of awesome information. Make sure if you got questions about that stuff, Bradley Roth is your guy to reach out to. I know him. I trust him. I'm going to be doing something here as soon as I can stack a little cash to put into it. Maybe we'll talk about a rollover too.
Sure.
But we appreciate you guys checking out the Big Guys Biz Show. I am Noel Pulanco. This is
Mike Stout.
And Bradley.
And that was Bradley.
Thank you so much for joining us. And if you got questions, that's how you reach them. So check them out, guys.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.